And now, it is my very distinct pleasure to introduce our presenter for the Pell Award for Rhode Island Excellence in the Arts. Speaking of local artists and great local artists, here is a great actor, a great local actor, who is going to be our presenter this evening, Mr. Sam Babbitt.
Thank you for those generous words. This being a theater and a theater crowd, I thought at first that the title of my little talk this evening would be taken from the opening number of The Sound of Music. I'm a little older than Kurt, I don't do rap. But you do remember, how do you solve a problem like Estrella? But sober thought led me to understand that I had to think backward. Estrella isn't a problem. Estrella is a solution. Briefly, there are three problems to which Tony is a solution. The first of these is, how do you identify, grow, and use what is referred to as local talent? It turns out you start with a quick, curious, questing mind, set in a handsome face and an agile body, and you give that person a family that cares deeply and that knows, to begin with, a good education is essential. You let that mind rub up against others who have the sense to recognize and encourage budding talent and ambition, and along the way you throw in a vital mentor or two, people who help to shape and steer that talent and that eagerness and let it test itself. And then when the right time comes, you provide a theater for him to play with. And you sit back and watch that person make his dreams and the plays of others come alive. But that's just the general solution. More specifically, you make all this happen in a single community known as Rhode Island. You make it happen in Pawtucket in a Catholic school. You make it happen at the University of Rhode Island. You make it happen at the Trinity Rep Consortium. It's all local. This is Local Boy Makes Good in a big way, and it illustrates the richness of the theatrical community we honor today. And finally, the backstory involves some Trinity Rep graduates who in 1984 wanted to stay in town and start their own theater, alias Stage. And by the late 1900s, having morphed into the Feinstein Gamm Theater, the organization finds itself broke. Is it again or still? I'm not sure. And it reaches out for new leadership. And after a bobble or two, here comes this young, handsome, talented, inspired, and determined product of Pawtucket. And within a decade, he has taken an ambitious, daring, but struggling amateur organization and made it into the Gamm of today, a thriving professional theater whose signal problem is that its yearly subscriptions have grown so much that there's a shortage of single-seat tickets. Still broke, of course, but that's what theaters do. And on the side, he gets pushed into a wall by Alec Baldwin in Scorsese's The Departed. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you a superb actor, director, and theater executive, the product of a remarkable community who now helps to shape it and make it even better, Tony Estrella.
you. Wow. Rabbi, speaking of eulogies, after you and Sam, what did Biden say last week at Lautenberg's funeral? He said, never give a good eulogy because you'll have to do them over and over and over again. They're going to be fighting. I hope he brought business cards because a lot of people are here. I want to thank the members of the committee and, of course, congratulations to my fellow recipients. It is an honor to be named in your wake, along with your recognition tonight. Let me add my thanks for doing all you do to make art matter, from our stages to our movie and TV screens, and into our schools and our homes and places of work. To Mrs. Pell and to the late, great Senator Pell, I humbly proffer my sincerest respect and gratitude for this recognition and for so much beyond it, for helping this, as Stephen referred to earlier, low-income kid pay for college. He did. And of course, for the National Endowment of the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. By providing more equitable access to a higher education and legislating the arts and humanities into the fabric of American life, Senator Pell did something miraculous. As powerfully as any statesman in our history, he recognized that our happiness, that the richness and quality of our inner lives are a matter of the public good and the essence of a civilized society. So while this award is meant to honor accomplishments past, it also, by virtue of the name it bears, confers a great responsibility going forward. The values it expresses are not ineradicable. They must be protected and aggressively fought for if we too care about quality of life, of our communities, about the happiness of our children and generations to come. And that's far too big a responsibility for any one of us, but luckily the theater, as most everyone here certainly knows firsthand, is a massively collaborative effort. And I have been gifted with massive collaborators. And this award belongs to them all. It is my distinct privilege to stand before you as the one voice chosen to represent many, to be a poor cipher to this great account that started almost 29 years ago. As Sam said earlier, it would take more than 20 of those years for us to realize the dream of creating in Rhode Island and for Rhode Island a second year-round professional company, which would have been impossible, of course, without this building, without Adrian's grand experiment, which in 1984 inspired several conservatory graduates to found Alia Stage, as Sam told us. Many leadership changes and a couple of fire-ravaged buildings later, we were renamed the Gamm. It could not have happened without that same conservatory, now the consortium, under Brian and Stephen's brilliant tutelage, continuing to churn out hungry, passionate actors and directors, myself proudly among them, who to this day continue to power Gamm Productions. And it certainly would not have happened without Kurt's leadership. His artistry, his generosity, and collaborative warmth has been a boon to Rhode Island ever since, as fate would have it, the Gamm happened to be producing Crime and Punishment while he was interviewing for the AD job here. I'm glad we didn't screw that one up. Thank you, Kurt, for opening your arms to us and to the entire community as a collaborator and a colleague, and for upping the cool factor of Pawtucket ever since you and Nate moved into Oak Hill. Real estate went through the roof. Speaking of which, thank you, Pawtucket. That sounds like a line from Spinal Tap. Thank you to Mayor Grebian and your staff, despite all the challenges facing that city, our city, for never wavering in your support of the Gamm and for making the arts integral to your vision of a thriving community. Thank you for making good on Senator Pell's legacy. A piece of this award belongs to you and to our city, as it does to all of our supporters, our donors, our patrons, and volunteers, to our brilliant staff, past and present, among them Gail, Brian, Susie, Shannon, Courtney, get to some others later. None more so than Yvonne Segerman, without whose tireless efforts over a decade, none of our success would have been possible, and which has been built upon by David Wax, our current managing director, who has guided us this year to our most successful season yet, all supported by our vigorous, passionately committed board of directors, many of whom are to my right, your left, led by our brand new president, Leon Bogosian. They volunteer their energy and their resources to produce season after season of often difficult, provocative work, and never blink, no matter how harrowing or lacking in commercial potential the play title that I throw in front of them might be. Among them, I must give extra special thanks to Colleen Covington, who led the board for so many of our most crucial years, and without whose selflessness the doors would have been padlocked a long time ago. But of course, above all, this award belongs to the artists, especially to our longtime resident artists. To Fred Sullivan for 17 years, from Hamlet through The Real Thing and beyond, to Judith Swift, my first mentor as an undergraduate at URI, who continues as a valued colleague 20 years on, to Janine, Jim, Steve, Karen, Wendy, Casey, Chris, David, Charles, Marilyn, Matt, Steph, Jess, so many more. Directors, actors, designers, many, many more, some of whom are in this room. Playwrights, those who are responsible for creating those great reckonings in that little room, from Shakespeare to Sarah Kane, that have defined who we are and what we do. Of course, on a even more personal note, thanks to my family for their incredible support, to my mom and dad, and to my brothers, and of course to Jennifer. Waking up to her every day makes me just about the luckiest schmuck on the planet. So many people share in this, and yet if we were able to break this guy into dozens of pieces and distribute them based on the impact of each individual's contribution, the lion's share would belong to the man who introduced me, sitting to my right, who is, without question, the Gamm's most valuable player off and on stage, and who, sad to say, will be moving on soon to new adventures in his life. Sam has done it all. He is personally responsible for keeping the theater alive when prudence and practicality might have, more than once, counseled otherwise. He is a mentor, he is a booster, he is a sage, an incredible actor, and the rock that this decidedly secular church is founded upon. When Kurt asked me who I might like to present this award, I immediately said Sam, and then added, well, the truth of the matter is, Kurt, I should be giving this award to him. To try and give voice to my gratitude, to the debt I owe him. As you can see, it's very hard. At the core of our mission lies Peter Hall's assertion that the theater remains any society's sharpest way to hold a live debate with itself. Sam, with stoical bearing, with style to burn, eminent class, has moderated that debate for a long time now. All of us, the Rhode Island arts community and its audiences, owe him a profound debt. So finally, I accept this on the Gamm's behalf, though if it were going to belong to one individual, it would shortly be heading down 95 to New Haven in the Volkswagen with Sam and Natalie. Of course, with typical selflessness, he'd refuse. So may it remain in one piece at the theater as a little monument to a great man and the hard work of a small army which he has led by humble example for nearly 20 years. To share this stage, any stage with him for perhaps the last time, was very, very special.